Oh yes it does. My hallelujah belongs to you. Hallelujah.
I'd like to welcome everyone here this morning into the house of the Lord. It's good to be here. Thank God for the breath of life, sound mind, the ability to walk through these doors. Amen. I'd like to wish all the mothers a happy Mother's Day this morning. All the mothers, honor the ones that are in heaven with the Lord also. Thank God for those moms. I'd like to say happy Mother's Day to my mother for being my mom and giving to me today, yesterday, and giving birth to me. I know I was pretty easy though. I think I was like 3 months changing my own diapers. So, is that Brother Ephraim? Were you 3 months, 2 months, 2.5? Okay. If you don't know, we speak sarcasm. I said you need to. If you don't know that language, it's good to learn it. Be multilingual. Amen. I'd like to wish my wife a happy Mother's Day. We are going to be in 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel. I'm not going to be long. We got some presentations. So don't worry that we're going to keep you too long in here. 1 Samuel chapter 1 and the 9th verse. So Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shiloh, and after they had drunk. Now Eli the priest sat upon a seat by a post of the temple of the Lord. And she was in bitterness of soul, and prayed unto the Lord, and wept sore. And she vowed a vow, and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on the affliction of thy handmaid, and remember me, and not forget thy handmaid, but will give unto thy handmaid a man-child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. You may be seated. There's two ways that I look at going about things in life, and especially our service unto the Lord in his kingdom. And one is, we can look at it and say, what's the least I can do? What's the least amount? What's the smallest amount I can do in his kingdom? How much can I just not do? How much can I not give? How much can I avoid doing for his kingdom? The other thinking is, what's the most I can do? How much can I give? What's the most I can do without breaking or destroying other areas of my life? And we are going to be in one of those two categories. You can say, well, we fall somewhere in between. But we're going to be thinking on one of those two ways. We're either going to be thinking, what's the least amount I can do, or what's the most amount I can do? For a mother, when she gives birth to a child, I don't believe she's thinking, what's the least I can do? What's the least amount I can do for this child? How much little can I get away with and still raise him? as compared to what's the most I can give in this child's life. In this story we see here the woman Hannah, who was barren. She was unable to give birth. She did not have a child. So we see here that she goes into the temple and she begins to cry unto the Lord. The Bible says in bitterness and sore. Now the priest, the lead, he didn't know what she was doing. He assumed that she was drunk. And he, of course, the Bible tells us he used to know the voice of the Lord, and he lost contact and knowing his voice. So he didn't understand what she was doing. But what she was asking the Lord, and in the King James it said, she vowed a vow unto the Lord. She vowed a vow. And she vowed a vow and said, if you give me a man child. She wasn't just asking for a baby. She was gender specific. She even asked not just for a baby, she asked for a boy. Let me give birth, and let me give birth to a boy. Before we go on to her next part of her vow, which I think is really beautiful, just like we can think two ways. What's the least amount I can do? What's the most I can do? It goes right along in being selfish or being selfless. Being selfish or being selfless. Now, we would all like to think that we are all selfless. And we know some people are more selfless than others. Now, we know that's a fact. But all of us have some measure of selfishness. And I'm not saying that for justification, and I'm not saying that for a license to be selfish. It's just that in our DNA, it's in us to have some level of selfishness. If we deny that, we're lying to ourselves. You didn't like that one. But we all have some measure of it. We know what it looks like in other people. We may not totally know what it looks like in ourselves. Again, we would like to tell ourselves we are 100% selfless. But there's a percentage of us that is selfish. In a woman's nature, it is in her nature to give. It's in her nature. It's in her nature to give life. It's in her nature. A man, on the other hand, it's in his nature to take. And it's even in his nature to take life. The least broken commandment of the 10 Commandments is thou shalt not murder. And it's not because everybody doesn't want to murder. That's not why. It's because if you murder, you get caught, you go to prison. That's what I believe why people don't commit murder. Some still do. The first murderer, we know who it was. Cain killed his brother Abel. And then he tells the Lord, am I my brother's keeper? Being smart aleck back with God after he took his brother's life. But it's more in the nature of a woman to give. It's more in her nature to be selfless. It doesn't excuse men, because we can be transformed and we can be born again. You didn't like that one either. But we can be born again and to be more selfless and less selfish. But getting to Hannah and her weeping, her bitterness, her sore, we can look at it from the perspective that she sees herself as lesser, feeling sorry for herself, seeing herself as a victim. We can also see her
saying, I am owed something. But I don't believe that's how she was coming to the Lord. I don't believe she was going to the Lord with, I feel sorry for myself. The faster we understand this in our own lives, the better off we're going to be in this. We may want to feel sorry for ourselves for the things we are going through. We may want to feel sorry for ourselves for the things we have been through. We may want to feel sorry for ourselves for the things we're going to go through. Unfortunately, God will never reward us for feeling sorry for ourselves.
That's true.
And I know some of you won't like me saying this, but the faster we understand that, the faster we can move forward in our lives. Because as long as we stay there with the stake in the ground, that woe is me, nobody knows the trouble I've seen, and life is unfair to me, and it's been unjust, and this has happened, and this person has done me wrong, and it may be true. But if we stay there feeling sorry for ourselves, we will never advance. And I don't believe Hannah stayed there feeling sorry for herself, saying, woe is me. The reason I say that, because she did weep. And she was bitter and she was sore. But what tells me the difference is that she said this. She said, then I will give him unto you all the days of his life. To me, that sounds difficult and a challenge. Now, she didn't say when he turns 18. She didn't say when he turns 21. I mean 21. Just say 81 too. But all the days of his life. She ended up becoming pregnant. And she gave birth to a man-child. Some of you should already know who his name is, or what his name is or was. That boy became who we know as the prophet Samuel, a great prophet. And we know that she kept her end of the vow because she gave that man-child back to that same priest that thought she was drunk. She ended up becoming pregnant and giving birth, and God answered her prayers. But she was faithful in her vow and turned around and gave him up to the priest. That shows her selflessness, which to me would be very difficult. As a man, it would be difficult to take 5, 6, 7-year-old boy and send him off. Just think how hard that would be as the mother. And not understanding how important it was that she kept that vow, which proves to me that she didn't look at it like, woe is me, feel sorry for me, and I'm entitled to something. Because if she did, she wouldn't have turned around and surrendered him like she did. But see, that's the way a mother is. A mother is able to see the big picture differently when she looks through the eyes of a mother. How important it is that a mom teaches a child what it is to talk to the Lord. Some of you don't agree with me. If you're going to teach your child anything, you need to teach that child how to talk to the Lord.
Amen.
You need to teach them to talk to the Lord. See, a lot of children are taught religion. And that's not what I'm talking about. Because religion can be faked. Don't get mad at me. As they say, fake it till you make it. But see, when you teach a child how to talk to the Lord, that's something you don't fake.
Amen.
Right.
I remember trying to think how old I might have been. I want to say about 9 years old. And I spent the night with my grandmother, my dad's mom. And, well, my grandpa was there too. But I remember my grandpa must have been asleep. But I was with my grandmother, and she began to talk to me about the Lord. I didn't know this till my older days, but her desire was for my dad to be a minister. I didn't know that. She didn't tell me that then, but she did tell me about the Lord. And she began to walk me through prayers. She began to walk me through different prayers and show me this is what you say, this is how you say it. And I was a young boy, and that day stayed in the sense. From that day forward, I never went to sleep without praying. Now, as I said, I started changing my own diapers when I was 3 months old. I only got A+ through school. I never ditched. How do they say it? I never choked. I never choked. I never smoked. I never chewed. And I never hung around with those who do. I'm joking. I got you, huh? See, that's how some preachers are. I say that line jokingly, but they say it seriously. I don't smoke, I don't chew, and I don't hang around with those who do. It's not biblical. Remember I told you about non-biblical scriptures? Amen. That goes on my list. It's not biblical. Because would Jesus say that? I don't smoke, I don't chew, I don't hang around with those who do. Does that sound like WWJD? No. In fact, he got accused of the opposite. That's right. I'm jokingly saying, because that wasn't the life that I lived. I ended up taking some paths and journeys that weren't the best. And I'm only saying that to say, I still pray. Amen. Amen. I still pray. That's right. That's right. Some of you can get on that train. Amen. But there used to be a time in my life that I would indulge in beverages that would change my perspectives. Some of you don't know what that is. Okay. But for those of you that do, I journeyed down that road. In these days of my life, I like to have control of my mind and my heart and my hands and my feet, and I like to walk a straight line and be able to discern and look at things. But in those days that I would come home fuzzy and blurry, I would still pray before I went to sleep. I would still pray. I remember laying there and praying, which is different than praying through when you're on the all fours in the bathroom. Some of you don't know what that is. The porcelain. Were they praying to the porcelain thing? Yes. Some of you may get that. If you don't, that's okay. That's a different type of praying through. That's like praying through on the roller coaster. Some people make a vow, I'll never do this again. Lord, if you remove this from me, I'll never take another drink just to go out the next day. That's not the type of prayer I would pray. I would still pray and talk to the Lord to the best that I knew how, and how my grandmother had walked me through that. I would still do it. And I did that all through my young age into my adolescence and my teenage years. And I even remember, and I wasn't going to share this, but I'm going to share it and we'll get back to Hannah. But I remember around being 12, 13 years old. And I didn't understand, but I know that I was being tormented by the dark side. I was being tormented. I know that, and I'm not big on this, and all of you know how I am about that. I'm not big on the devil this and the devil that, but I know that there was a spiritual torment on me. I didn't understand it. But I did know enough to pray and to fight. And this is about 12 or 13 years old. And eventually I began to get more peace, but not the total peace that I eventually found. But I was able to fight through. But I was able to fight through because I had that ability that was taught to me how to pray. How to pray. I think about this, and that was only for a short period of my life. My sleep's important to me. Not only is it important, my sleep of peace is important, what we call a rest.
Yeah.
And I think some people are tormented all the time. They can't sleep. They don't even want to go to sleep. You know what? Some people don't want to go to sleep because when they go to sleep, they get tormented. Somewhere along the line, if they knew how to pray, they forgot how to pray. Or maybe they never learned how to pray. Or maybe they need to relearn how to pray. Or they need to start to pray. And again, I'm not talking about religion. And many times I'll hear stories of people saying that all these things that happen. It's like you don't have to live like that. We don't have to live like that. You should be happy about that. And I'll say this, the thief cometh to kill, steal, and destroy. But he comes to give life and life more abundantly. And part of that life is not being tormented. But because a mother teaches a child how to pray. A mother teaches a child how to talk to the Lord. Again, I'm not talking about religion. If there's anything a mother should do, is she should teach a child how to pray. She should teach a child how to pray. And let's pray that that man-child comes back and prays for that mother now. Because Samuel became a great man of God. What a blessing that would have been for Hannah. Even though she gave up that man-child, she gave him up. He came back to her in the sense that he became a great man of God. Some of you aren't getting this. Well, my dream is not for my child to be a man of God. Well, because we're seeing through religious eyes. Because there's many ways to be a man of God. We can teach our children how to be a person of being street smart. Well, I taught them how to be street smart. I can go a lot of places with that. Because there's a balance of babying a child the wrong way and teaching them how to be a man. And don't think it's easy. And I don't want one of you to say I got it down to a science. Because it's a moving target all the time. I want to be loving to my boys, but I want to teach them how to be men. And I know some people won't understand some of the discipline that has to come in. And I'm not talking about a belt. I'm just talking about teaching them how to have structure. How to stand on their feet. One of the first things I did with my boys was I put them in wrestling. When they were little, I put them in wrestling because I knew something. It evens the playing field. And some people, what, you want them to go out and beat people up? No, that's not what it was. I understood something. That when somebody has a discipline, what they call a discipline, they will rarely use it.
Yep.
And they will avoid using it.
Yep.
But if they have to use it, it's in there. And there's something about when you talk to a man that has a discipline, there's a confidence and not an arrogance. And he will respect other people. You learn respect. And in wrestling, after they finish the match, the first thing they do is they run to the other person's corner and shake their hand. They learn respect. Yesterday, someone I know fought in the Bellator, and he won his fight in less than 15 seconds. And he trained hard, and he was training hard, and he had to change his diet and all these things. And it was, you could see it on YouTube, but it was, they kind of went at each other, and just one swing, the guy was to the ground, and then he put him out. And I'm not trying to go beat people up, but yeah, good night. So anyways, I was like, I was happy for him. But this guy is one of the nicest guys you'd ever meet. And you would really have to do something extreme to drag him into a fight outside of that ring. You'd have to do something really extreme, like mess with his family or something. But really nice guy. If you just met him and you didn't know, you might miss it. But well skilled inside the ring. So there's a balance that comes with that. And I remember thinking, I have to teach my boys this certain thing of discipline, and begin to take it as compared to teaching them the streets. Teaching them to walk in wisdom. They weren't like me, where I changed my diaper at 3 months old. And I listened to everything I was told. They weren't like me. They didn't listen to me all the time. They still don't listen to me all the time. But I try to tell them certain things. Try and put that, instill into them for a reason. Because life is going to challenge that man-child. Life is going to challenge that girl-woman. It's going to challenge her. You may not like it, but it's going to happen. What better thing to instill into them but how to talk to the Lord? To talk to the Lord. Some of you still ain't buying it. Okay. So I'll do to you, Linda. Listen, Linda. They're not getting it today. Tough crowd, tough crowd. I'm not one, when somebody just makes a mistake, to kind of lose my cool. If you've been around me, that's not really my way. But when I say, if you do this, this is going to happen. If you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. I'll explain that. And then so many times people do the exact opposite. They do the exact. If I say don't do that, they'll go do it. And if I say do that, they don't do it. So many people. And then when it comes back and then I say, that's why I told you this. That's when I get a little bit more of my voice raised. That's why I said this. That's why I said this. Not because of religion. Because that's what people will say. Well, I'm not all in the church thing and I'm not religious. Has nothing to do with religion and church thing.
Come on.
What do I call it? 2 plus 2?
4.
2 plus 2?
4.
See, people still trying to make it 3 and 5. They're determined to turn 2 plus 2 to 3 or 5. I'm going to show you. The other thing is gravity. Gravity applies to the atheist, and gravity applies to the righteous bishop. It applies to both. So I'll say it's gravity. 2 plus 2 is 4. and instill that into people. But they'll kick against the pricks. But hopefully we instill into them children how to talk to the Lord, that they have that.
Amen.
And as Hannah delivered that little boy to the priest, gave him up. And as that little boy, the Almighty Creator of the universe began to call him. And that little boy gets up and he runs over to Ali and he says, "What?" And he says, "What are you talking about? You called me." He says, "No, I didn't. Go back to bed." Happens again. Runs up. "Hey, you called me." He says, "No, I didn't." You remember Ali used to know the voice of the Lord. He forgot. But it came back to him. Why? Because out of the mouth of babes, that little boy began to teach back to this priest. And it hit him. He says, when it happens again, and all of you should put this in your hard drive, because this is something that you should put into your life. Speak, Lord.
The servant heareth.
Speak, Lord.
All right.
Speak, Lord.
Yes.
For thy servant heareth.
Yes.
Amen.
Thy servant heareth. What a beautiful verse.
Amen.
What a beautiful verse. That little boy learned. That's God. Speak, Lord. Speak, Lord. He that has an ear, let him hear.
Amen.
The best, the first, the most, the greatest. Forget all that. Forget all that. Have an ear. Have an ear and teach that little Samuel. Hear the voice of the Lord. Hear the voice of the Lord. Thank God for moms like Hannah.
Amen.
Thank God for moms like Hannah. Amen. Thank God for moms like Hannah. Please come up, team. I just hit 3-0. That means 30 minutes I'm going out. What was that? That mom being able to make that vow to God, to keep that vow, and then to deliver that boy back to the Lord. I'm glad you're here. Amen. I'm glad you're here. You know where most people are right now? They're waiting in line at a restaurant. Mother's Day brunch, right? But this is a better brunch.
Yes.
Because this can set that into motion. That a mother delivers that man-child, delivers that child back to God, and eventually that child's able to say, "Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth." Are you up? God bless you.